Welcome back, fellow Illumineers, to be our guest. Why are you looking at a loaf of bread? Well, I've done my deep dive videos into the set review, the draft set review, for our different ink colors for Shimmering Skies. But I want to take a lot less time and hopefully give you some quick hits. If you're really just looking for, Heath, you don't need to tell me why, just tell me what to draft. I mean, alright, if that's the way you want to be, then I got you, man. So I do need to give you a little bit of context about why we're touching on a few things, but I'm going to make it as brief as possible, which is, if you've ever drafted a game called Magic the Gathering, you've probably heard of, or maybe even Lorcana draft, this concept of bread. As in, these are the piles that you should be kind of associating the different cards with. Bombs, the big splashy cards, big impact, one of the top things that you want to take. Removal is, I can get rid of your characters without having to challenge, right? I can find some other means to get rid of your characters. Evasion, we've got evasive characters, right? Just hard for your opponent to remove, right? Aggro, we don't necessarily have aggro in the same sense that they do in Magic. We've got kind of the lore race that we can go under, right? Really aggressively statted high lore characters for lower cost. So we do have some level of aggro, but that's not necessarily to the same priority because quite often you can run out of gas if you just focus on that. And then they've got duds, which is just like obviously everything else, and that's fine. There's a couple other categories that I want to draw attention to that I'm going to emphasize, which one is card advantage, which is when I just trade my character with yours, I challenge into yours and they're both banished. That's card parity. I used one card to remove one card of yours. When I can either put a card down that draws me a card, so I've got a body on the board. Remember Maleficent Sorceress from set 1. We got a 2/2 and we drew a card. So now I have two assets. I've got a body on the board and I've got another card in hand. That's card advantage. Or, if my character is able to challenge multiple of your characters, I'm able to banish two of your characters for one of mine, that is card advantage. I used one asset to remove two of yours. So card advantage really valuable for maintaining. If I'm trying to go aggressive, I need to be able to, keep maintaining that pace. And if I never have any card advantage, I'll probably run out of gas. And the last is board control. If I've got some really great top end, I've got to be able to control the board. What does that mean? That means some aggressively statted physical stats, strength and willpower, to challenge some of your more potentially aggressively costed lore characters, and or effects like Bodyguard or the King of Hearts effect that allow me to stagnate your board or lock down your board to prevent you from taking advantage of my more vulnerable characters, right? So those are the things we're going to be talking about as we talk about these cards. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go through all of the costs up into 6+, right? And I'm going to try and identify what are the cards that we want to prioritize in each of these costs. So that leads us to our last kind of discussion point before we get into the cards, which is we want to have a curve in place. I want to have a certain number of 1-drop characters or cards, then a little bit more 2-drop, a little bit more 3-drop, and that's probably my peak, is 3 to 4-drop. And then if I've got the most volume of 3 to 4-drop, then I've got a little bit less 5-drops, and certainly a lot less 6+ drops. Again, 6 is kind of the magic number where you usually want to cap at, barring some really powerful 7-drops, right? But 6 you can get to inking 1 card a turn and playing 1 card a turn up till turn 6. 7 is plus is harder to get to. So that's kind of where we want the curve to top. So let's say we have 5 to 7 1-drops in our deck, 6 to 8 2-drops, like 8 to 10 3-drops, 6 to 8 or 7 to 9 4-drops, and then 6 to 8 5 to 7 5-drops, and probably like 3 to 4 4 to 5 6+, depending on, again, when I talked about Mufasa, I talked about maybe I've got my Donald Duck ramper in my deck, but otherwise a few 6+ inks. So let's start with 1. So we want to have 6 to 8 1-drops thereabouts. 5 to 7, 6 to 8, somewhere in that range, right? So which ones are we prioritizing? So I think we identified that in almost every iteration of this, that our 1-drop 2/2s are pretty good take. We rated them as low B, right? So that means that we're not happy to first pick this, but we're very content to have this in our deck. We want to take this kind of middle of the pack, right? But they serve a really good buffer because they take out most other 1-drops if we get behind. They take out a decent amount of 2-drops, and or they quest and force our opponent to trade with us. These 0/4s are low C, which means I don't really want them in my deck, but I know that they're probably going to be there in a 1 or 2 of if need be. If I can't find a lot of 1-drops, I will play them, but I'm not happy to play them. The one that I want to play the most above all others is Arthur. A 1-cost 2/3. Forget that it is reckless. It will become relevant. There will be times where you do not want to challenge in with Arthur and you are forced to. That will happen. But for all of those times, there are so many more where your opponent plays a 1-drop 2/2 into a 2-drop 2/2 or 3/2 or something like that. And you get to hit that 2-for-1. In the Ruby review, the detailed review, I brought up all the 1 to 2 drops in the set. And really, there was like 2 cards that this didn't 2-for-1 with. Right? So you're going to 2-for-1 with almost all of their 1 or 2 drops with this character. If I could have 4 Arthurs in my deck, I'd be happy. I probably wouldn't want more than that because then the uninkable count gets really risky. But I would definitely have up to 3 or 4 of these. And this is a low A for me. I would not be ashamed to first pick Arthur. He's that good. We got another 1-drop 2/2 there. The 1-drop Basil here, I was debating with myself whether I liked him more or less than the 1-drop 2/2s. I think I might like him just a little bit more, especially in partnership with the 2/3 Arthur, because now all of a sudden Arthur can take out one of their low drops, and then you can use support for him to take out a 3-drop or maybe even a 4-drop with that 4 strength between Arthur's native and the support ability. So he's one you might have to hold back some turns if you want to be a little bit cautious with him and not get an unfavorable challenge in. You don't want them challenging him with a 3/3 unless you've already gotten good value out of his support. So don't just quest with him with abandon. But yeah, I think I like him a little bit more, which means he's still probably a low B, but maybe a little bit higher than the 2/2s. And then we're okay with happy, right? So if we want 5 to 7 1-drops, my ideal situation is like 3 to 4 Arthurs and maybe a couple of the 1-cost 2/2s and or Basil here, right? That would be my ideal, but I'm perfectly okay if I've got a handful of the 2/2s, a Happy, a Basil, and maybe I was only able to nab 1 Arthur or something like that. That's okay, but somewhere in that range is what we're looking for. All right, let's look at the 2-drops here. So 2-drops, we're still looking to control the board. Our card advantage, our powerful cards come later in the 4 and 5 ink. All right, so let's look at our 2-drops here. So the thing I want us to be very mindful of is now that we've looked at all the cards, think about which cards are going to lose horribly to Arthur. As you select your 2-drops, be very cautious about that, right? Slaughtered by Arthur. Is going to lose to Arthur maybe 2 times, but it's losing to Arthur. Is still losing to Arthur, loses to Arthur, right? So our invite to the ball we established, depending on our uninkable count and our count of characters, which should be high, naturally. Invited to the ball is definitely one that's in consideration for our 6 to 8 2-drops, right? Rapunzel is one of those. Rapunzel's Tower is only one that we really want to play if we must. I wouldn't really even count that in my 2-drops because it's ink, right? It's something that I normally want to ink, but might occasionally be useful. These ones, there's several of these 2-cost 2/2s. If I must, I'll play them, but they are a low C for me. I'm hoping I don't have them in my deck. Hypnotic Strength, okay, but still isn't a 2-drop, isn't controlling the board really. Bonsai, one of the best ones for a 2-drop, especially if you're trying to go aggressive or you have the 3-drop Fix It Felix Bodyguards. Absolutely. So I like Bonsai. Mother Gothel also isn't a 2-drop. I'm hoping not to play it on 2. I'm hoping to play it at the 5 ink to be able to bounce. Here is my champion of the 2-drops. Again, you got to be careful with the uninkable. But even with 4 Arthurs, I'm still happy to have a couple of turbos. And if I got to play him as a 2-cost 2/3 and there's nothing to rush into, that's not so bad. Remember, that was our common vanilla stat line. Yes, they were inkable, but still, a 2-cost 2/3 is a very respectable stat line. Add rush in there, I will pay that uninkable cost gladly. So Banzai and Turbo, definitely top of the list. Daisy Duck, perfectly respectable. I'd be happier with a 3-1 body, but it's inkable and it's perfectly respectable. Vision of the Future, not what I want to be playing on 2, but if I ended up having to play it on 2, that's okay. Kronk, acceptable, not excited. Doc, I love, I want it in the deck. I do not want to be playing this card on 2. So I would not be counting this as a 2-drop. So if I want 6 to 8 2-drops, I'm hoping, this is assuming I got the Arthurs I wanted. If I didn't, I will take a few more of these. But assuming I got 3 to 4 Arthurs, I'm probably capping at 2 turbos. So let's say 2 turbos. Likewise with Banzai, I probably only want like 1 of those if I've already got these. And it's rare, so I probably will only get 1 anyway. Daisy Duck, I'd be fine with a few of those, right? So maybe we got 1, 2, 3 type thing. And then we've got to, just for the sake of kind of filling out our 2-drop slot, we got maybe Visions of the Future, maybe 1 of these 2-cost 2/2/1s, right? And then maybe we've got some other Gothos that if we have to play it on 2, and especially if they've got some 2/1s out there, not the end of the world, right? Awesome. All right, let's look at the 3-drops. I've got 2 that are the highest on my list by far. Fix-It Felix Jr., and if we come down here, we'll see our dear friend Simba. This and Fix-It Felix Jr. are absolutely my top 2. So if I want 8 to 10 3-drops, I'd be thrilled with 3 each of those. That would be fantastic. Moana, again, rare, but obviously if I could sneak 1 of those, I'd be happy. Archimedes, I know I was a little bit down on, but I'm still perfectly happy to have. So a couple of those. Couple of White Rabbits. This is where I said 8 to 10 3-drops. You could definitely have more than those. You just don't want to be in a situation where like turn 4 and turn 5, your hand is entirely 3-drops, right? So you just got to be careful of that. The Library, another huge one. I would consider that to be at least a 4-drop plus because you want to be able to move at least 1 character and get that card advantage right off the bat. Scroop, another great one. So let's go because we got more to talk, more ones in here to highlight. So let's kind of go in order rather than jumping all over the place. So Fix-It Felix Jr., 2 to 3 him would be fantastic. Moana, if you can get 1 of her, great. Archimedes, if you can get a couple of them, great. Gale, I probably would only want 1, and even then I'd be cautious. White Rabbit, 1 to 2 of those I'd be happy with. The Library, I'd take as many as 2 or 3 of those. I wouldn't take more than that, but 2 or 3, and if I got 2, obviously I'm probably not going to play 2. I'm probably going to ink 1. If I can nab 1 Scroop, great. If I've got to take a couple of Shenzi, I'm not dissatisfied with that. Anna, obviously, if I can nail the... if I can grab 1 of those... I would absolutely take an Anna. Clarabelle, as I mentioned, amazing on the play, ink on the draw, but still, getting 1 or 2 of those, fine. Night Howler Rage if I must. Snowana, I mentioned before that I would probably rank her as a decent card, but if I'm getting the other unankables I want, I gotta be really cautious. She is not good enough to warrant space if I'm already tight for unankables. Minnie Mouse over Donald Duck, but still fine, either of them. Anyone else? When Will My Life Begin? I wouldn't really count as a 3-drop, right? You're not playing this on 3. So I wouldn't really figure that in. I would just take that based on kind of the ranking there a little bit later on in the pack. So prioritize Simba and Fix-It Felix Jr. in terms of, common, uncommon type things. Next priority would be your Archimedes and your White Rabbit, and maybe Gale, definitely the Library, Clarabelle, and then if you can manage to snag Anna, then absolutely, right? Lots of great 3-drops. This is what I'm talking about. Like, it's not that Arthur and Turbo are so amazing that they should be high picks, but look at the number of great 1 and 2 drops versus the number of great 3-drops. And we haven't even gotten to 4 or 5 where, for me, the best cards in the set are, right? Or at least best commons and uncommons. So when we got such a bevy of choices here, that makes it so we got to prioritize our best 1 and 2 drops higher because the next best options there are quite a bit lower. Whereas the difference between a Fix-It Felix Jr. and an Archimedes or a library or even a Shenzi is not so massive, right? So just something to keep in mind there in terms of why we want to prioritize Arthur and Turbo so much higher. All right, let's look at our 4-drops here. 4-drops, Sven was solid. Minnie Mouse, really good. Bruni, I want to love him more, but still really solid. Madam Mim, fantastic. Rafiki, gonna be awkward sometimes, but definitely still worth taking. King of Hearts has my heart. King of Hearts, I love you so much. You are exactly the mean, cruel lockdown prison card that I always love. Fantastic, especially with bodyguards around him. Scar, really, really good. Even the 4-cost 4/4s, perfectly serviceable. If you happen to have a couple of libraries and you want to add a Taffeta in there, I'm not going to blame you for that. Vanellope, if you're not high on uninkables, great. Scrooge, even if you are, probably still worth it. A really big body, especially if you can get him down on 5. Stitch, probably the best 4-drop, competing with King of Hearts. I would say I like King of Hearts more, and it's inkable, so I would go with King of Hearts, but those two are very interchangeable. And then Yzma, perfectly reasonable. So we're prioritizing Stitch and King of Hearts, especially King of Hearts if we've got bodyguards. Minnie Mouse probably next in terms of commons and uncommons. Then we're perfectly satisfied with Sven. And then in terms of rare plus, if we can manage to get our hands on a Madam Mim, if we can manage to get our hands on a Scar, if we can manage to get our hands on a Scrooge McDuck, then we're happy with that. So if we want 7 to 9 4-drops, depending on my uninkable count, let's say my uninkable count's reasonable enough, I'd be happy with 2 or 3 Stitches. I'd be happy with 2 or 3 King of Hearts. More than that, you run the risk of just drawing a hand of King of Hearts, which alone, unprotected, and without other cards to manage the board is not good. So 2 to 3 would probably be my max for him. And then throw in a Bruni, throw in a Madam Mim if you can type thing. And you've got your 4-drops there. All right. We're rocking and rolling. 5, which is the best quality. Forget that Arthur is kind of the best in terms of compared to his competition at 1-drop and 2-drop. But the best for me, common and uncommon ink slot is in 5. Fix-It Felix Jr., if you've got the libraries, goes up in value, but it's still probably pretty low. Minnie Mouse, likewise, not super exciting. Archimedes, super solid. Elsa, fine. Monstro, worse than it would normally be, but still perfectly reasonable. Zazu, probably the best 5-drop. That and Hey Hey, right? Amazing stat lines and evasive. Donald Duck as a legendary, okay, right? Denai, questionable. Wish it was a 5/7. Donald Duck, especially if you've got Mufasa, sure. King Candy, also uninkable. Be careful, but really powerful. And Hey Hey, just so well statted for a bodyguard. Oh my gosh. Bodyguard as an ability at 5-drop after King of Hearts is fantastic. But that stat line alone is great. So for me, if I could have 4 or 5 Hey Heys, and if we want 6 to 8, if I got a 4 or 5 Hey Heys and a couple of Zazus, and that was my 5-drops, I would be very, very happy. But any mix of those is fine, but definitely prioritizing Zazu and Hey Hey as the top of that curve for 5. All right, we're getting into the high cost here. So 6, 7, 8, 9 plus 9. 9 plus is obviously the reducing ones. I would lump together. Again, not more than 4 to 5 of these 6 pluses. You got to be really careful. One you're going to see the most, and probably for me the highest value pickup, other than like the rares and all that, highest value common uncommon 6-drop is going to be the Knock. It's removal. It's a solid body. It heals as well. Louisa, obviously, as a rare, really well statted. Love her. Camilo, you might be able to make some fun with him. Mother Gothel, probably a little too slow. Jafar, yeah, a bomb, right? So, obviously, if I can get Jafar. But in terms of common and uncommon, the only one that I really care about is the Knock. Maid Marian, fine. But the Knock is your 6-drop that you want out of the common uncommon slot. And you'd be thrilled with Louisa, fine with Mother Gothel, and ecstatic with Jafar. Let's look at 7 drops here. We got a couple that we... Actually, let's just look at all of them at once. You know what? Cool. Wreck-It Ralph, as we said, I think worth it at 7. Pushing it, very questionable with the 7 cost on Inkable, but I think there's enough value there that I would absolutely take him. Anna could be just a 7 cost 4/5/2 lore if you don't have the cards to take advantage of her ability. You have to have controlling cards. Genie is too slow. Olaf, all of these cost reduction 9 cost ones are risky, but I think Olaf can definitely be possible at 6. I think 5 is going to be really hard to get him at, but 6 is absolutely doable, and I would absolutely pay 7 for 6/6 3 lore evasive. So Olaf I've got pretty high. Robin Hood I think is a little bit higher just because it's a little bit easier to pull off, and he will definitely survive the turn, but Olaf's going to survive longer. It's tough. I would waffle between the two. If I was looking at both of them, it'd be tough to pick between them. Chances are you won't see both in the same pack, but I think either or you'd be fine with. Clarabelle does not work in draft, or shouldn't work most of the time. Gaston, you'll be able to get him out, but he's probably not going to do more than get a 2-for-1 for you, and you're probably never going to quest with him. Radagon, if I get him late, you're not going to get him late, but if I get him late, sure. But again, I would put him in the same vein as Wreck-It Ralph. There's enough value there, but you got to be real careful with a 7-drop uninkable for what you're getting for it. Sheriff of Nottingham isn't coming out. Mufasa, I am going to make work. He is going to work. But you got to be so careful with him. Him you have to build around, but he's so powerful. He's such a big bomb if you can build around him that I'm going to try it every single time. Namari is probably the 4th toughest to get out, but she'll survive a heck of a long time. So she's going to get you that 3 lore every turn, or challenge if you need her to. But again, risky. Risky. Lining up banishing is a lot harder than you'd think. So I wouldn't take her very highly, but I wouldn't blame you for taking her. Same with Sir Ector in terms of the likelihood of getting him out in a time that he's going to be impactful. I would much rather, at a 7 cost uninkable steal, I would much rather Arthur, especially if you can shift him out onto the 1-drop Arthurs, right? You throw down turn 4, you throw down a 3-drop in one of the Arthurs, then turn 5, shift onto this. Yeah. So just to recap, really the only 6+ common uncommon that I'm really excited about, not excited, but like satisfied with, is the knock. In terms of the rare plus, you know, there's quite a few of them. Of the 9 drops that reduce the cost, I would say your best bet is to prioritize probably Robin Hood, then Olaf, then Gaston, then Namari. The other 2 are unplayable. Mufasa, props to you. I want to hear in the comments if you can get him out, but he's going to be challenging. And that's it. That's our brief highlight of some of the heavy hitters. Focus on that, you know, turns 1 through 5. 6+ is sexy, I know, but you're going to have times where those get stuck or just come down too late. So your game plan really should be those 1 to 5 drops as your priorities. And make sure if you're going for the splashy 4 and 5 drops like I like, that your 1 to 3 drops are really focused on controlling the board and making sure that you don't fall too far behind. All right, that's it. Thank you, everybody. Love you so much. I don't know what the next video will be, when it will be, but I'm going to keep trying. I've really missed doing this. I love you all so much. I've missed this. I'm going to try and get back on Twitter now that I'm at least got this. If nothing else, I'll have a few videos once every set if I can. I'm going to try and get out more. Let me know what you'd like to see me talk about. If anyone even remembers anything I talked about before, or just feels like there's a gap in what's being covered in the content creation space for Lorcana, don't hesitate to let me know. Doesn't mean I'll do it, but I'd love to know your thoughts. All right. Thanks, everyone. Love you so much. Cheers.